Now live and on lockdown.
Are you ready?
Broadcasting from Edinburgh, Scotland and across the globe.
Listen here.
You're listening to Ramsey Unleashed, Going Beyond Borders podcast for host Fraser Ramsey.
Good day, folks, wherever you are in the world. This is another edition of the Ramsey Unleashed Going Beyond Borders podcast. Basically going through live through LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and also we'll be uploading to Podbean for the audio purposes for the podcast. And I'm re-interviewing a guest from I've interviewed already several years ago at the beginning of his kind of journey into music, his journey into, let's say rock, headbanging, you name it, just millions gigging to your heart's content and just literally developing his music. And I connected him through Lonnie Lee, which she was changed her name. I forgot what her previous name was. But anyway, he was being interviewed by somebody else and I kind of connected and it went from there. And I've kind of just followed his journey over the years and how his music's grown. And just through his ups and downs in music and how he's traveled all over the place. And also how he's literally he's taken it, how he copes with his his disabilities that he has, but how he turns them into basically, a total positive thing through his music and how he copes with being on the road. And how he's grown. And also we're talking about his new music, which he has out as well, and how it's quite slowly climbing the Christian rock charts. So I welcome the man, the myth, the rock star, the great friend I've known for a long time, Matt Sassano. Welcome to another edition to the Ramsey Unleashed Going Beyond Borders podcast. How you doing?
Hey man, it's good to be back. I'm really excited about what's going on, and like I've said before, you were one of the first back in 2018, 2019 to really interview me as a solo project. And so it's good to be back on Scotland airwaves, man. It's going to be good.
I know, it's good. So let's just touch base, or just to sort of back a little bit reminder, just to refresh. Tell us a bit of a summary about your life, because I know you've obviously gone through a lot of struggles in your life through also with your disabilities, but maybe just touch base on some of the struggles you've had through your life and just the touch base on some of the disabilities you suffer from and how your coping mechanism.
Sure. So I grew up in a small little town in upstate New York called Canisteo. Nobody's ever really heard about it. It's more cows than people. It was just really nothing going on at that point. I grew up, I was born and with some big complications. We found out really soon upon being born that I had one disability. I have cerebral palsy. And that kind of affected me throughout my life, when it came to physical problems. I had trouble walking. I would trip a lot when I was growing up. And then it wasn't until later that we found out the secondary disability that I had is called dyscalculia, which cerebral palsy in my case definitely has like a big impact on me. But I would say out of the two disabilities that I have, the dyscalculia is the lesser known disability, but the more challenging in my case. So that impedes my ability to drive. Like I get lost easily. I really had a hard time holding down certain jobs and everything because I would get lost. Like I remember numerous jobs where I just wouldn't meet the qualifications because I couldn't run a cash register. I'd get lost easily. There'd just be a lot of just everyday demands that I couldn't do well. And music was the first thing when I was a teenager that kind of made me feel empowered, and I didn't really like the reality that I was living when I was confronted with all the disabilities that I had. When I would pop on the headphones, I suddenly felt like an empowered person, and I would live vicariously through all the bands that I listened to growing up. And I was, on top of the disabilities and things like that, I was raised in a church. I got to see a lot of the great sides of church and learned a lot about my faith. But on the other side of the spectrum, there was a lot of hidden abuse that went on with my father, who was the preacher. And so I would typically go home after a church service and there'd be routine arguments. There'd be flipping furniture around. There'd be yelling all the time in my household, just constant tension. I remember a lot of times where, you'd come home from church and there'd be just like this whole flip in personality with my dad and everything. And, oftentimes we would get in physical altercations and I would be left with bruises. So throughout my life, man, it's just been trying to figure out what life was all about. And music kind of brought that closure to me and, helped me along the journey.
There we go. Matt has certainly been through a lot, and I know he has, and he's come through the other side. But we're going to talk. He's talking into his music. That's the whole point. Because he's got some great new songs, and they're absolutely amazingly fantastic. And they are. But we're going to talk about his music, just to sort of more of a backtrack a little bit, kind of leading into what he's doing now more. But it's really just how he's just the journey is just amazing what he's come through. But it's amazing the whole about a journey is you got to push, you got to work at it, you've got to keep going forward. And Matt has certainly done that. He's like a great testament that he's not quit, he's not buried his head in the sand. He has just kept going and kept going and kept going, pushing against the grain. And by pushing against the grain, he is succeeding. He's not letting his disabilities get in the way. They're not a stop wall, saying a stop button by saying, no, I can't do this. He's just saying, no, I can do this. And he's doing it. And he's continuing going forward. So tell us, just talk about people who are watching just a bit more experience talk about your music, about the kind of style of music you do, and why you got into that kind of style of music, just to refresh people. And we'll come into eventually your sort of new song, your sort of the recent signing, etc.
Sure. So I would class myself as maybe an electronic rock artist. There's a variety of different styles and things that are incorporated into my current stuff. I come from a background where I was just straight up rock. But as I've morphed, I've learned a lot more about being a solo artist and what it takes, and also just kind of enjoying a lot of the electronic sounds that you can get from tracks and things. So, a lot of my music just deals with things that people are going through. And I'm really excited about my new EP. Is called In Defiance. And In Defiance is basically a call to action to the listener to stand in defiance of whatever brings them down, makes them feel worthless, or makes them feel like they're powerless with no voice. And so that's kind of the overall narrative of this new music. When I got started in music, it wasn't my original plan to even be a singer. It was my original plan to play bass and just write the songs. I've always been good at writing songs. And when I first started the music journey, I was kind of timid. I wasn't the let's go get it type of personality that today. I was a little more shy, a little more timid. And what had happened was back in the day when I was working with a bunch of, when I was doing the old rock and roll stuff with a band, what had happened was I would draft singers every other week. And so we'd try to get people to sing with us, and then they'd ultimately quit. And then I'd be right back at square one. And so one time I remember I was in a church service, and this lady, it was a new church we'd never really gone to. And this lady came up to me, and I'd never met her really. And she had never met me. And she told me, she was like, I want you to stand up. I was in the middle of this service with a bunch of probably about 200 people maybe. And she said, I want you to know that God is putting on my heart that he wants you to use you in music. And I was all for that. I was all cool with that. I had already, been playing bass and writing songs. And then the next thing I knew, she said, and he wants you to sing. And at the second she said sing, my heart dropped out of my chest, man. I had never sang a note in my life. And I was like, you've got the wrong guy, 100% got the wrong guy. And I just remember just walking out of that service, just completely mortified at the thought of singing and being in front of a microphone and leading the whole thing. And sure enough, it took me about a week to battle with myself to like really come into it. And I just started singing. I just started, doing the practices and singing, and like just kind of grew into the role that now. It wasn't an overnight process. I started off just pretty bad. I wasn't as good as I am today, and it was just kind of a process. But now it shows the foresight of that, because I'm the only one left on that stage. Like, I used to come from 5-piece bands and stuff, and now I'm a solo artist. I go out just by myself, and so the foresight of that whole thing was amazing. And that's kind of a little bit of that journey of how I've become a solo artist and what it took.
Let's talk about it a little bit. I know, if you don't mind talking about it, I know, but in the build up to now, you had a bit of, you've had, well, I would say, I've done your relationship issues. You've had relationship, but they've been a struggle, because I know what you were, but obviously trying to balance that, and also wanting to meet somebody and maybe settle down the line. But I mean, if you don't mind, you can talk about that if you want to. But I know you've had that kind of, I know up until now. But I know you were out dating somebody, and it was a bit of a struggle. It was up and down. It was fine, but that kind of, I know you went through a bit of a downward spiral a little bit, but you've kind of overcome that. But now God's provided you somebody even better. But if you don't mind, touching on that.
Yeah, sure. So I think relationships has always been kind of a uphill battle for me. I think when you go into life, I mean, a lot of men are just insecure people. It's you get insecure. You just kind of, you get to that point where, the dating pool is increasingly just harsh. We see it every day. And so when you pile it on with, disabilities, and you've just got that natural, you got that natural struggles that men, overcome. And then you pile on disabilities with it and say, I can't drive, I can't do all these things. Relationships tend to become a harder thing to navigate. And so I remember in 2020, one of my first big tours was being arranged. It would have been my first time on the road. And I was really looking forward to it, man. I had been working, and, the work that goes into this is pretty insane on a lot of levels. And so to finally get out on tour and do my thing was really an exciting thing. Well, we went out, and I was with this band that I know on my label. And we were in Fort Worth, Texas in 2020. And that show eventually just shut down because of the pandemic. And it just left me in this spot where I was just depressed. I was questioning God. I was just in a place where I felt like I lost my purpose. I felt like I just really didn't have my purpose. I saw a lot of people around me suffering from, lack of jobs and just shutting down their businesses. And it just left me in this super depressed state where I got into a toxic relationship. And, we were together for about maybe 5 months off and on. And I made the foolish decision to get engaged. And that relationship ended just as quickly as it began. You started to see the cycle of the endless arguments, the just wearing me down all the time. We just get into these really, really arguments that would go in circles. And I was just tired, man. I felt like I lost my purpose. I had this person that I felt was just at conflict with me all the time. And so I ended up writing this song called Enough, which was basically for those people that maybe have a hard time feeling like enough in their relationships, and they find themselves in toxic situations. And that was kind of the starting point where I felt like my music was getting back on track with what I really, really felt inside, and attacking issues that I thought were relevant to today's culture, whether it's toxic relationships, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's whatever it is. Enough was kind of a turning point for me, but it was a tough time because I remember I had one show planned that year, and I would say 5 minutes before the show began, I found out that the fiance was leaving, and she ended up just up and just saying, like, I don't love you. I don't think I'm I'm not going to stick around while you do this music thing. It's probably not going to go anywhere, blah, 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 blah. And just left me in a really empty place. But through that, I've just gotten to see how in the last 2 years, doors have opened, and I couldn't be more grateful.
So this song that you wrote, Enough, did that kind of start to lead into the songs that you have sort of brought out recently?
Yeah, I think for a period of time, I've always been a rocker. But during my previous projects and stuff like that, I felt like I was sometimes maybe just writing for the sake of writing. And you've been writing for so long that you just kind of lose touch with, like, why am I here? What am I doing this for? So when I had that breakup occur and I went through that pain, I wrote a song that was just completely genuine to how I felt at the time. And it just reminded me why I was here and what I feel that is to be a light in situations where people are struggling and all that kind of thing. So it kind of just brought me back. Not that I intentionally beforehand was kind of writing music that was not as deep, or maybe I don't know. It just reminded me of why I was here. And so that was kind of the start of what I would feel of, like, oh, this is why I'm here. I'm here to talk about relationships. I'm here to talk about issues. And that's not like all that I do, but I would say that's a large chunk of what I've done and what I feel like I'm here to do.
So when things started to open up in your area and you were allowed to when did things start? When things started to open up, what I was trying to say is when you're able to travel a bit further into different states of America, when did that sort of really roughly kick in, and when you could actually go further afield and you start doing more gigs and then really getting your music out there?
Sure. So how that all happened was around the time that After Enough was released, I had a producer named Colton, and that was kind of the start of, like, what I was saying, like this kind of move into more issue oriented music again.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, Colton, which he's an awesome producer, he just got busy. And so
Right.
I ended up trying to look for another producer in the meantime. And the producer ended up being Josiah from this pretty well-known American rock band called Disciple. So he is the guitarist for this band called Disciple that I'd listened to since I was 15. I was a fan of them for a long, long time. And so little did I know, he had his own studio, and he's probably a few hours away in Nashville. So he's about 4 hours away from where I live. And that's when I started writing music with Josiah, and Josiah had the connections to kind of further push me on the tour trail with Joseph, who is another band called 7 Day Slumber. So it was like getting into this network, working with Josiah, and then like him pushing me, hey, there's this Matt kid, you ought to check this kid out, man. Would you ever go on tour with him? And eventually, with enough knocking on the doors, I was able to do my first nationwide tour with 7 Day Slumber, and now I'm on my third. So I've done 3 with them, and it's amazing too, because I grew up, like I said, as just a normal kid. I'm just as much a fan of music as I am a person that does it, and so being surrounded by these people that you grew up listening to and being on tour with them and like recording in studio with them is just a crazy experience, because like I said, I didn't really think my life would go beyond a certain point, like as far as just being told what I could and couldn't do throughout my life, recording with people that I'd idolized throughout my teen years.
How many, when you were on tour with 7 Day Slumber and Disciple? Yeah, how many sort of tour dates did you do, and how long was it, the tour?
Oh, wow. So I've not been on tour with Disciple yet. We have recorded together. I'm hoping to get on a tour with Disciple.
Right.
But as far as 7 Day Slumber, I've done over 100 shows all across the U.S. I mean, you name it, we've been there. And so the first tour was about a month long. I left for about a month. We just spanned everywhere, man. And then like the second was 3 weeks, and then the third was about 3 weeks. So I mean, every time we go out with 7-Day Slumber, it's somewhere in the area of like a month. But we have done a lot in churches and in prisons. We'll go and, talk to the inmates and things like that, and be able to do shows for them. And it just was a really eye-opening experience, because those guys never stop. Like, I went from 2020, the girl saying, "I don't think your music's going to take off," to 2021, a show every day for straight, no stopping for months at a time. So it's like, oh my gosh, man, it was a challenge for me, but it was an awesome challenge.
So in that process of doing touring, when did you meet your current girlfriend?
Okay, so we had started talking. Her name is Faith, and she has been a longtime friend of mine. We started talking, and I want to say it was 2020, right before the 7-Day Slumber tours took off. And how that ended up happening is, she lived in Missouri and I lived in Tennessee, and we were just both really, really into music. We were hugely into the Christian music scene. So we would just talk on Snapchat, on all the social networks and everything. And it came to be that right before I was leaving for tour, I was going to hang out with this one girl, and she ended up standing me up. She was like, I'm kind of busy. Something came up. So I had a whole week or two. I had a week available before I had to go off on tour. So I was like, you know what? Why am I not, still just having fun? Faith has been asking to come over and hang out with me for a long time. So I just called Faith up. I was like, hey, Faith, would you like to come and hang out with me? And this was about a year ago, almost today. And she came up. We hung out, and we just started getting close. And, it was crazy, because we ended up in a relationship during my first 7-Day Slumber tour. So we saw each other for a little bit of time, and then I'd be off on the road on a month, and then it'd just be like texting and calling and video chatting for the rest of that month. And then I'd come back, we'd do a few days again, and then I'd be off for another month. We did about two tours before we finally were like, you got to move more in this direction so we can hang out and be together and all that kind of stuff. So now she lives about 15 minutes away from where I am, and it's been awesome.
That's good. It's because she also does music as well, but we'll come into that. But let's talk about your new music. Let's because obviously you've been touring and you got an EP out now. But what was the first song that you decided to write, which is then led on to the next one, and then so on, which has now become the EP?
Yeah. So the first song that we began to write was called "Not My Name," and that really wasn't originally on the list of like what to release. Like, I didn't even have that song written at first, and so I came in the studio with 5 song ideas with Josiah, and I just watched this EP change little by little by little to what it is today. And "Not My Name" is a song that goes out to people struggling with labels and disabilities. Oftentimes when we have disabilities, we end up being known for whatever we don't want to be known for. Like, I remember in school, there was a blind kid and everybody called him blind kid. I remember there was a deaf girl and everybody called her deaf girl. And so oftentimes people want to condense you down to like whatever your title is, whatever your disability is. And, for a long part of my life, I was condensed down to, there's that kid that walks with a limp, or, I'd be in a disability meeting where they'd want to help you and they were pretty well meaning, but they would need the most pathetic version of your life to try to help you. And so you end up kind of becoming this stereotype, and it's discouraging when you become known for that. And so "Not My Name" is an anthem to the black sheep, to the person that's the outcast, to the person with the disability, to say, hey man, I'm more than the labels that you put on me.
There we go. And how far did it go in the charts?
Hey man, we are so excited, man. The first time we released that song, it was in conjunction with the tour with 7-Day Slumber, and we just watched that thing climb to #1 on the Christian rock charts. And it's amazing because it's not only just an amazing song that I thought really I had no example to follow because there was really nobody writing about that stuff, but it's also opened a really big dialogue. So I'll be on tour and I'll meet people with, cerebral palsy and with autism and different disabilities. And it's just an awesome experience to be able to connect with people on that level.
That's good. So I hate when somebody used to call you when you're on a podcast.
I hear you.
so I'm not answering the phone because I'm on a podcast.
It's all right, man. It's all good.
The joys of live stream. The joys of live streaming. The joys. Yeah. Just in the middle of the interview. Don't call me. Don't.
You're an important dude, man. You can't argue there. So,
oh my word, that's just gonna be into it. I'm gonna have to try and edit. I'll just leave it in. It's one of these things, live streaming, and somebody calls you and you try and turn everything off. It's like, oh, it's like, never mind. Anyway, as one of these things, the joys of live streaming. Anyway, of live streaming a podcast, whether it's for your video, audio, or purposes, the reality. Anyway, yes. So after not in my name, which got to #1, which is great. What was your next? How did you come up to lead up to your next song?
All right, so the 2 singles are Not My Name that we just discussed, and then the second single that we're currently pushing right now, we came out with a music video for it. We're going to be doing a whole campaign, and it's called Dear God. Right. And basically, that song is about in the darkest times of my depression, when I was really feeling down and out, and I was struggling with these questions that come up when you have disabilities and abuse in your life. I used to, I found myself in my room a lot. I'd be isolated because I can't really drive. I can't really get out as much as I'd want to. And I just found myself in an isolated spot day in and day out, just waiting for something to happen. And while in the waiting, I would write letters to God, asking him what his purpose was for my life, venting my frustrations. And really just over a series of years and years, these letters just started compiling, addressed to God and saying, where are you? I don't understand why I have to contend with these disabilities. Why do all my friends and all the people that I see, why are they successful and I'm not? Why is it that I have to contend with, abuse from my dad? Who are you, God? Like, are you like my father, or are you a loving God? Who are you? I'm trying to figure this all out. And so, Dear God is basically a tribute to that time when I was writing letters to God, trying to just figure things out. And that song has reached a lot of people too. It's currently #4 on the Christian rock charts, and we're going to be doing a campaign with the song. I'll have to tell you a little bit about. It's going to be awesome.
That's good. You've got how many songs on the EP in total?
So there's 5, 2 singles, and then just 3 that are just regular songs. But I think as a whole, this EP is going to impact people, and we've already seen how it has impacted people in such a great way.
So you've done Not in My Name, Dear God, and what's the other? You've done a couple others, haven't you? Or what's the other?
Yeah. So then after that, I was looking for another song, and for whatever reason, I was like, we were talking about Faith being my girlfriend and everything like that. I had this song called "Sorry Is a Dirty Word" that I had wanted to write, and basically that song is, we live in a divided world, man. There's a lot of people that come into old relationships with family or friends where they feel betrayed, where somebody had hurt them, and they carry the weight around with them because sorry is that one word that person won't say. And as I was talking about this song and I was writing it, I was talking to Faith about this, and we come from similar backgrounds where we just struggle with family issues and stuff like that. And so we really connected on this song, and it just made sense that after all these deep conversations about our family and the issues that we were having, that she'd be on the song. So I ended up having her featured on it. And it's just one of those songs that people really connect with on tour. I hear countless stories about how, hey man, my dad doesn't talk to me. Hey man, I have a nephew that, that we had some run-ins and now he doesn't talk to me. It's been years, or whatever it is, that family member, that friend that's just sorry, just doesn't come off their lips, man.
That's good. So have you got any more? Is that all the main three songs that you're kind of pushing? Because you said there's 5, or is it kind of just...
So there's 5. And then after Sorry is a Dirty Word, we had a song called, it's the title track of the whole EP, and it's called In Defiance.
Right. Okay.
And that one was awesome because I featured Josiah from Disciple on vocals. I had heard what he had done on one of the songs vocally for a Disciple song. And I was like, hey man, like, we're working on this together. Why don't you just jump on and do it with me? Let's do it. And he was kind to do that. And that is a really pump you up kind of anthem. And it's just basically talking about whatever is a tyrannical force in your life, whatever brings you down in life, whether it be, depression, or whether it be even just a real issue with, the state of the world or whatever, not to feel powerless and to stand in defiance to whatever makes you feel powerless or says that you don't have a voice. And that became the theme of the whole entire album, to stand in defiance, because that's been my whole life, whether it's in defiance of disabilities, in defiance of labels that people have put on me. And I know a lot of people struggle with a variety of different issues, that it just is a day by day process to fight.
What was when was the key moment when you were approached to say, hey Matt, we want to sign you?
So I had been on tour with that 7 Day Slumber. I want to say it was like, it took a long time for me to kind of earn my keep. I know Joe. He's been on the road for, a long, long time, 25 years. And so, in this music industry, you run into a lot of people that are just, they'll go on tour, musicians are all ego and everything. So it took me a while to kind of prove myself to Joe that I would be a reliable person, that I'd show up for the shows, that I would stay out of the way when they were busy, that I would, just be an asset on the tour. A lot of times musicians, they're all about themselves. And so it took me a while. But around the time of the second tour, Joseph had approached me and just told me about the signing and everything like that. And I was all for it. And he just said, man, you know what? I really enjoy what you do. I love what you stand for. You've conducted yourself over 2 tours now in an amazing way. I get compliments about bringing you on the road and how people have connected with you. And so I want you to join the Rockfest family. And from there, he's helped me with overseeing the music videos. He's helped me oversee he's connected me with a lot of people that have brought about this EP and the things to follow. So I couldn't be more happy, man. And I'm excited for what's to come.
So with the now being signed, what's your kind of goal? What kind of ideas or goals that you've got in your head for new music, even though you're pushing the current new songs?
Mm-hmm.
But what have you got in your head with any ideas that you'd like to maybe touch
base
on?
So I'm really just enjoying the feedback that I'm getting from this particular album. People from all over the place. I mean, I get in South Africa, like I got a message the other day just saying, man, jammed out to Dear God. This is amazing. So this current body of work is still kind of on the rise, but I like to stay ahead of the curve and write new songs and just stay ahead of the curve. And a lot of what I'm writing about now pertains more to mental health. I'm like I said, Dear God, I want to bring back to that a little bit. We're going to be doing a campaign where a lot of people can write their own Dear God letters. I'll have a website called I think it's called mydeargodletter.com. And what that is people can write their own Dear God letters based on what I just told you about how the song came to me and writing those letters. And then they'll be connected with mental health if they want it. So they'll be like 24 hours counselors and people to talk to through an organization called the Hope Line. And so we're going to be working with them. And I think pressing on in the future, songs are going to continue to touch on things like that, like mental health, like, just the state of the world and how we fight against the status quo and how we fight against our own vices and demons. And so I'm continuing to write, and I'm hoping that, before long we'll have more music out. But really, it's just amazing to see how these 5 songs have resonated, and I'm hoping to continue that.
There we go. I think we've kind of covered quite a lot in your music, so obviously, which is great. And I think, is there anything else you kind of feel that you want to share over the last it's gone from being developing your music to then everyone was kind of just stopped for 2 years for everybody because of the world. But now then you've kind of just literally gone, as soon as things have pretty much been the all clear, all gates are open, that you've kind of just gone from 0 to 100 in about 2 seconds, literally, not to 60. If you're, with your music, you've just literally scaled. So anything just out of thinking of where you've come from, because you're more confident from the first podcast we did. You were a bit nervous. You were very kind of, you were more guided. Now you're kind of just like go with the flow. Hey man, it's just chilled. Water for ducks back. This is great. That's kind
of what
you're sort of the groove.
Yeah, that's kind of what 100 dates with 7 Days Slumber or any band will do to you. You just get used to talking more. You get more confident in what you're going to do. And so, it's been awesome. But yeah, it's crazy to see how from 2020, when I was in my lowest place, to now, like, touring the country and hopefully the world. So I just really want to encourage listeners of this podcast, man. If you're at your lowest, if you're at that place where it feels like there is no end and you're wondering where God is, just to continue to press on. I know that seems cliche, and sometimes that can be like, oh yeah, it's easier said than done, man. But I've been there and I have done it. And so I just encourage you, if you're going through something, I just encourage you to just keep on. And if you need to seek mental health issues or anything like that, if you have things that are in your mind that are dark, or you're going through divorce or whatever it may be, man, reach out to somebody and don't hesitate. The Hope Line is available, so you can link that, or we can try to figure out a way where you could call that Hope Line. Because I know life is tough for a lot of people, but I want to bring that message that you can stand in defiance of whatever you're going through.
Well, we will have a couple of links where you can purchase Matt's new music. He's obviously, you can listen to it on his YouTube channel, Matt Sassano. There's a lot of songs there, and the video for his recent one, Dear God. Recommend watching it. But yeah, thanks, Matt, for the second interview and just telling us about your music and how you got signed. And obviously, you've went from a toxic relationship to an amazing relationship with a wonderful woman, also doing a duet with her in a song. And it's just like, it's just going to go strength to strength. And it's amazing where you've come from my first interview to now,
Yeah, man. And I just want to thank you. When that breakup had occurred, you were the first person to call me. So I really appreciate that, man. I was going through a really rough and low time when that happened, and you were the first person to call and check up on me. And so it's great to be on this podcast, man, and just be with you again, man. You've been a great friend, and I really appreciate what you do.
Well, if you're not into rock music or heavy metal, I highly recommend Matt's music because it's got a fantastic message and it's well worth the listen. It's not maybe as heavy as you think, but it is heavy, but it's good. It's just the way it's done. It's just, it's got a very good message, and I highly recommend it for those who are looking to just to learn a bit more about Matt and his music, and maybe want to interview him. And but the guy's literally gone from amazingly just the difference is night and day. Night and day is the difference in Matt, and I look forward to maybe in about a few years' time. We'll be interviewing him again on new music, and who knows where he will be. We'll just the next chapter is being written as we speak. But to everyone who's watching, listening, or listening on the podcast, wherever you are in the replays, live or whatever, thank you for tuning in and supporting us. We're brought to you by there's Frame Your Day app, Natural Soap by Zakia, Be Seen, Be Loved TV. Many people who support us, we're grateful for, and the people we like to support, the interviewers. Sorry, the interviewees, I should say. I'm the interviewer anyway. The people who we interview, I should say. I would like to be able to say thank you to the guests we do have on our show. Hopefully the people we do have that will make an impact into your life, wherever you are in the world, depending on whatever you're going through. And please connect with them, reach out to them, and you never know. It might be a business or something, relationship waiting to happen that you can then develop into something in whatever it may be. But anyway, till next time, folks, thank you, Matt, and to all the people here, wherever you are, have a great one, and till next time, bye for now.